Hey there! Today I'm going to do a comparison between vintage Swiss Army knives, officers' knives from the 1950s, and it's not just going to be a side-by-side comparison between Victorinox and Wenger. It's going to be a side-by-side-by-side comparison between three knives, the third of which most people have never heard of. And no, this is not a counterfeit Swiss Army knife. This is not a Chinese knockoff. This is not French or German. This is the third Swiss Army knife company that no one's heard of, Rothlisberger. Now, I had heard of Rothlisberger for one reason. I like to collect soldier knives, and I knew that they were the third provider of the 1951 soldier's knife, the 1951 model, in 2 years only, 1956 and 1957. So that makes Rothlisberger the only third supplier to the Swiss Army for Swiss Army knives since 1921, in addition to Victorinox and Wenger. So just for 2 years, 1956 and 1957, Rothlisberger supplied knives to the Swiss Army. By the way, these knives are from the Dave Arnold collection, and Dave is working on acquiring a Rothlisberger soldier knife, which is also very rare as they were only produced in small numbers for 2 years. But I never knew that Rothlisberger also produced an officer's knife. And it is amazingly similar to Victorinox and Wenger, except for some very subtle differences. And it's a beautiful, fine knife, so we're going to take a look at it. And I will say this is probably the rarest Swiss Army knife I've ever had in hand. So let's just start with this 1950s Victorinox Climber, because these are 3-layer knives. They have the basic tools and a pair of scissors. So this is the most head-to-head comparison that could be made. And thanks to the depth of Dave's collection, we can get a very similar, we can go into his collection and pick out a Victorinox Climber, same tool set, with exposed rivets and no bail to be a very close matchup to this Rothlisberger knife. And the same with the Wenger. We can go in and get a Wenger. That's 3 layers. This is a Traveler with scissors. Again, no bail, exposed rivets. So let's take a look at a couple things, and the first one I want to look at is the tang stamps. So this age Victorinox is going to have the Victoria Officier tang stamp with a crossbow. And then on the other side we have a Victorinox Switzerland stainless with no Rost Frey. And on the Rothlisberger, we have a very interesting tang stamp. If I can pick it up in the camera here, get that to focus. It reads Erinox. So we're not really certain, but we think maybe that is a combination of maybe a family member's name, Aaron perhaps, and Enox, of course, which is short for Noxidable, meaning stainless. And so much like Victorinox, Victoria Enox, or Erinox, this could be a combination of a name that was important to someone there in the company in stainless steel. You can also see that their logo seems to be an anvil, and at the bottom it reads Switzerland. I'll go ahead and just open the Wenger up. And the Wenger is just going to read Wenger Switzerland, and on the other side Wenger Enox with crossbow. So in '51, Victorinox moved to this new modern patented can opener, but you can see that the Erinox, the Rothlisberger, was still using the old style can opener, much as the same way Wenger was. So there's a look at those two tools. You can see how similar they are in size and weight. There's subtle differences between the screwdriver and the cap lifter tool. As you can see, the Victorinox does have a wire stripper bender and the Erinox does not. It also seems to be just a little shorter and just has a little more of a tapered look to it. And then, of course, then you have the Wenger, which has got that crazy elongated shape where they have the wire stripper in front of the cap lifter. Okay, taking a look at the scissors. One thing I noticed was the Victorinox scissors. Of course, it's a larger knife, but they seem quite a bit larger. Both have a screw pivot. The Erinox has a nail nick here at the top, as well as on the blade. The Victorinox just at this point in time just on the blade. The springs are also slightly different. The Erinox kind of has, instead of a little curled return at the end, just kind of has a loop. I would say they're much more delicate. And then here are the Wenger scissors. This example's missing the scissor spring, but you get the idea. Pivot screw, same type of spring. Okay, they all had the very sharp, robust awl or punch. I've heard this described kind of as a tetrahedral awl. It's curved all but two sides. The Erinox is really similar there. So is the Wenger. And finally, corkscrews. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turn fluted corkscrew, or with a decorative groove on the Victorinox. It does also have aluminum liners, I want to mention. The Erinox also seems to have aluminum liners. It has just a 4-turn grooved corkscrew, as does the Wenger. And at this point, I think they all had aluminum liners in the 50s. Now, in addition to soldiers' knives and officers' knives, Rothlisberger also produced farmers' or peasant knives. And Dave has an example of that in his collection, one with horn scales. And here it is. Here you can see the name, actually the name Rothlisberger, embossed in the blade. And then this specific tool, has the saw. The hawksbill pruning blade, and like a sacking needle. So this knife was probably, it's hard to say when this knife was produced exactly, because actually Rothlisberger is still in business. And it's run by a 3rd generation Rothlisberger who will make you a knife. And this, he'll make a pocket knife or a farmer's or peasant's knife for you on order. And he operates in the same shop that his grandfather used. So very, very cool. One thing that I have read somewhere is that, on the officers' knives, the shield was so similar that the Rothlisberger at the time had a fight with the Carl Elsner at the time over the legality of the shield. So I don't know how that came out, but you can see that it's very similar, but it's different. And no one owns the rights to the Swiss Cross, of course. So there is the 3rd, I bet you didn't know about that, Swiss Army knife. Totally legitimate, great history. So it's not just Victorinox and Wenger, but for a very brief period of time, there was also Erinox by Rothlisberger. Thanks for watching, and have fun collecting.